Picture this. You're a leader in the therapy space. Maybe physical therapy, maybe occupational, speech. You've been grinding for years. And you're finally in growth mode. You've just acquired a competitor. The deal is signed. Champagne's popped. You have the keys. You're ready to walk in Monday morning, flip that sign to open, and just watch the revenue roll in. It feels like the finish line, right?
It feels like the finish line. That's definitely the fun part of the deal.
Yeah.
But, based on the research we're looking at today, you might have actually just stepped on a landmine.
A landmine is a strong visual,
Yeah.
but that is exactly where we are unpacking today. We are looking at this hidden mechanism in healthcare mergers that, if you ignore it, can literally freeze your revenue instantly.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about losing a few patients. We mean the entire insurance spigot just turns off.
We are talking about credentialing.
Credentialing. No, I know. For our listeners who are all industry pros, that word probably sounds like the most boring back office paperwork imaginable.
It sounds like checking boxes on a clipboard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the context of a merger or an acquisition, the source material we're diving into paints a very different picture.
I like to call it the oxygen line for the business. Because you can have the best therapists, the best equipment, a beautiful waiting room, patients who love you.
All the right pieces.
All the right pieces. But if you are not credentialed correctly after that sale, you cannot bill. And if you can't bill, your business stops breathing. It really is that simple.
That is a terrifying image, but it sets the stage perfectly. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a report from Prime Credential, specifically focusing on how mergers or acquisitions affect therapy clinic credentialing. And our mission today is pretty specific.
It is. We are here to dismantle the single biggest myth in clinic M&A. It is this really dangerous assumption that when you buy a business, you automatically buy its ability to get paid by insurance companies.
Which, to be fair, seems like a pretty logical assumption. I mean, if I buy a coffee shop, I get the espresso machine and the right to sell coffee. If I buy a clinic that's already in network with, say, Blue Cross or Medicare, surely those contracts just come with the furniture.
And that is exactly where it all goes off the rails. Because in the eyes of an insurance network, a merger isn't a handoff. It's a restart.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is what the report calls the new identity problem. Why doesn't the contract just transfer? Why is it so rigid?
Well, you have to look at it from the payer's perspective, the insurance company. When a business changes hands or creates a new legal entity, the payer sees a stranger.
A stranger.
A total stranger. They don't know the new owners, the new tax structure. They haven't vetted you. So they view the new owner as a completely different applicant.
So it's not like passing a baton in a relay race.
No, not at all. It's more like the first runner stops, walks off the track, and the second runner has to go all the way back to the stadium entrance, fill out a new registration form, show their ID, and then wait for approval before they can even get on the track.
That sounds incredibly inefficient.
It's efficient for their risk management, but it's a complete nightmare for the provider's cash flow. And the source material highlights a very specific, very crucial rule from CMS, that's Medicare, that illustrates this perfectly.
Okay.
The rule says that in a typical clinic acquisition, the seller's Medicare identification number, it dissolves.
Dissolves. That's a very final sounding word.
It is absolute. It means that number is gone. It doesn't float over to you.
Yeah.
The new owner is required to re-enroll under their new tax ID.
And if they don't, if they just think, we'll sort the paperwork out next month and just start billing on Monday,
then you are technically an out-of-network provider overnight. If you don't update that ownership and tax ID, payers will classify you as out-of-network. And that leads to immediate claims denials and payment delays. You're doing the work, seeing the patients, paying your staff, but the check is not coming.
That brings us right to the pitfalls. The source outlines several specific traps that leaders fall into. And the first one is exactly that, the automatic assumption.
Pitfall number 1, assuming contracts transfer. And what's fascinating is that even if you think you have a good relationship with a payer, you know the rep, you've been in town for 20 years, the actual contract language might trap you.
How so?
Many agreements have specific change of ownership clauses.
We call those CHOW clauses, right? What do they usually say?
They often say that the contract terminates upon sale. Or, and this is the really tricky part, it might say the contract can be assigned, but only if you get specific written consent beforehand.
Beforehand. That's the key word.
Exactly. If you don't get that consent, the contract is void the second the ink dries on your sale. And think about how deals work. They're often confidential right up until the last minute.
So you have this tension between keeping the deal quiet and needing to go ask the insurance company for permission.
Right. Silence is not golden here. Silence is termination. And that leads right into pitfall number 2, which is the tax ID trap.
This sounds like the bureaucratic nightmare part.
It is, but it's so critical.
Yeah.
We mentioned Medicare, but this applies to Medicaid and all the commercial payers too. If your tax identification number, your TIN, changes, you must re-enroll.
Why is that TIN so important to them?
Because that's who they're paying. It is the financial fingerprint of the business. Failing to update that information is one of the most common reasons payments just freeze. But beyond that, it creates huge compliance red flags.
Right, because if you're billing under an ID that doesn't match your bank account or your legal docs, that looks suspicious to an auditor.
It looks like fraud. Or, at best, gross negligence. You're asking them to pay an entity that legally no longer exists in that capacity.
Okay, so we've got the contract assumption and the tax ID trap. But there's a third pitfall I found really interesting because it's not about the corporation, it's about the humans. Pitfall 3, the people factor.
Yes. This is so often overlooked in the frenzy of the deal. You get focused on the business, the brand, the location, the EBITDA. You forget the business is actually just a collection of individual clinicians. Your PTs, your OTs, your SLPs.
And they're already credentialed, right? If I buy a clinic and I keep all the staff, aren't they good to go? They didn't change, just the sign on the door did.
Not necessarily. Every individual clinician may need to be re-credentialed under the new organization.
Yeah, really. Even if they're at the same desk, treating the same patient, doing the exact same job.
Yes. Because they are now attached to a new tax ID and a new group MPI. The source material really emphasizes this. You have to go and collect updated licenses, malpractice coverage certificates, their individual NPI numbers, their CAQH profiles.
CAQH, that's that central database for providers, right? Sort of the common app for doctors and therapists.
Correct. It's like a digital resume for insurance companies. And here's where it gets really messy. If you buy a clinic with 20 therapists, you have to audit 20 CAQH profiles.
And if one of them is messy.
If one therapist has an outdated profile, or you're missing one malpractice certificate for one speech therapist, it can stall billing for that entire provider.
So you can't just say, welcome to the team, keep working. You have to re-verify every single person.
You have to assume every payer needs to be told that these humans now work for this new entity. One missing form can jam up the whole works. It's a massive administrative lift that usually lands on a team that's already completely stressed out by the merger.
This just sounds like a massive headache, which makes me wonder about the timeline. That's the big question, right? Okay, I have to do this. Can I knock it out in a weekend?
I wish. The reality check from the Prime Credential Report is quite different. Credentialing typically takes 1 to 4 months.
4 months.
4 months. And that's a typical timeline. The big payers, Medicare, they often take the longest. It's just a slow-moving machine. You can't speed it up just because you have a mortgage to pay.
So let's just do the math on that. I buy a clinic, I have payroll to meet in 2 weeks, I have rent due in a month. But I might not get paid by my biggest insurance carriers for 4 months.
That is the gap, period. And it brings us to the most dangerous question that clients ask in this situation. They look at that 4-month gap, they look at their bank account, and they ask,
can we just bill under the old owner's ID while we wait?
exactly.
It's tempting. I mean, the old ID is still in the system. It works. The claims go through. Why not just use it as a placeholder?
And the answer is a hard no.
Why? If the service was provided, what's the real harm?
The harm is legal. Because once that transfer of ownership is official, the old owner legally ceases to be the provider of care. The source material is very explicit. You must stop billing under the old tax ID or TIN immediately upon closing.
And if you do it anyway?
You're submitting claims with false information. You are telling the insurance company that Old Owner Inc. provided the service when actually New Owner LLC did it. That leads to denials, sure, but worse. If you get audited, you could be looking at False Claims Act violations.
So you are completely stuck. You can't bill under the new ID yet because it takes 4 months. You can't bill under the old ID because that's compliance fraud.
Exactly. This is pitfall number 5. Ignoring transition cash flow risks. That revenue drought is real.
So what do? Just close the doors for 4 months?
No, but you have to plan for it. The source mentions strategies like holding claims.
Holding claims. You mean just stacking them up on a desk?
Digitally, yes.
Yeah.
You treat the patient, you do the documentation, but you don't hit send on a claim. You wait.
Yeah.
You wait until your new credentialing is approved. And then, if your contract allows for retroactive billing, you submit that whole backlog at once.
But you have to have the cash reserves to survive that wait.
Absolutely. You need a war chest, not just a piggy bank, going into an acquisition. If you go into a merger assuming cash flow is continuous from day one, you are going to run out of money.
Now, I want to pivot to a specific scenario that seems like a loophole. The source material brings this up, and I think a lot of our listeners are probably thinking this right now. What if I don't change the tax ID?
Ah, yes.
What if I run a big clinic and I buy a smaller one, but instead of creating a new entity, I just absorb it into my existing business? I keep my own federal employer ID number. Does that let me bypass all this paperwork?
It's a clever thought. I'm not new, I'm just bigger. And technically, your business entity itself didn't change.
Right, so I'm safe.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
The expert correction here is really important. Even in that case, the acquired therapists, the people you just brought on, must be added to your payer rosters.
Ah, so even if the business ID is safe, the people are still new to your contract.
Correct. Some payers will treat those acquired clinicians as brand new providers who need full credentialing. And on top of that, you still have to update all the facility details.
The address, the phone number, the name on the door.
Right. If you start billing for services at a location the insurance company doesn't have on file for you, this new satellite office you just bought, they might deny the claim. They don't know you operate there.
So there is no magic skip button.
There is no magic skip button. You still have to notify every single payer to avoid billing issues. You might save a little time, but you are still doing significant paperwork.
It seems like no matter how you slice it, you cannot escape the credentialing team.
You cannot.
So let's turn this into an action plan. We've scared everyone enough. The source material actually gives a strategic checklist. If I'm a listener planning a merger, what should I be doing right now?
The most important takeaway is this work has to start before the deal closes. It's part of due diligence.
Due diligence is usually checking the finances, the legal liabilities. You're saying credentialing needs to be right in that pile.
It has to be. One guide we looked at for health centers lists public payer enrollment and credentialing as key documents to review. You need to know what you're buying. Are the current providers even properly credentialed?
That's a good point. If the seller's paperwork is a mess, you're just buying a mess.
Exactly. You're buying a liability. So step one is audit.
Okay, audit is step one. What's next on that checklist?
The source lists 4 key steps. 1. Notify payers and regulators. Don't wait. Start that conversation early.
That goes back to getting that written consent we talked about.
Exactly. 2. Audit all contracts and providers, which we just discussed. 3. Submit new applications. Do not sit on this. As soon as you legally can, get those applications in the queue.
Speed matters?
Every single day you delay is a day added to that gap period. And 4, maintain cash flow. You have to anticipate the gap.
That fourth one seems like the one that saves your business.
It is. If you know the gap is coming, you can secure a line of credit or adjust your budget. If it surprises you, it kills you.
The source also mentioned a specific penalty that caught my eye. This isn't just about losing money. There are actual federal rules here.
Yes, specifically Federal Regulation 42 CFR 424.51 cent.
That sounds serious. What does it say?
It basically mandates that you report any changes in ownership, control, or practice location within a certain time frame, usually 30 days.
And if you fail to report that...
Failing to report isn't just bad business, it's a violation of federal rules. And that can lead to Medicare and Medicaid sanctions.
Sanctions, like being kicked out of the program.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Or fines. It puts a black mark on your record as a provider. Compliance isn't optional. The government wants to know exactly who they are paying. If you hide that change, even unintentionally, you're violating that trust and that regulation.
This really changes the whole perspective on M&A. We focus on strategy, market share, branding. But what you're saying is that the plumbing, the credentialing, is what decides if the house is even livable.
That's a great analogy. You can buy a mansion, but if the water's shut off, you can't live there. Credentialing is the water.
So, to recap our deep dive today, a merger isn't done when the contract is signed.
No.
It's done when the insurance companies know it's signed.
Correct. And, it speaks to this disconnect between the excitement of business growth and the very rigid reality of compliance. Leaders get excited about the deal, but integrating credentialing work streams into the plan is the only way to make sure patient access isn't disrupted.
Because at the end of the day, if you mess this up, the patient pays the price, they show up for their PT appointment and get told, sorry, we can't take your insurance anymore.
Exactly. And that damages your reputation way more than a delayed opening would. Patients don't care about your corporate structure. They care about their care. You break that trust, it's hard to get back.
It's a sobering reality check.
It is, but it's
Yeah.
a manageable one if you plan for it.
I want to leave our listeners with a thought to mull over. We've talked about the value of these clinics, about cash flow, but think about this. If the value of a therapy clinic lies almost entirely in its ability to see patients and bill for them, and a merger temporarily destroys that ability because you forgot the paperwork, did you really buy a functioning business? Or did you just buy a very expensive building full of volunteers?
That is the question.
So if you're looking at a deal right now, go find that change of ownership clause in your payer contracts, read the fine print. It might just save your business.
And don't be afraid to ask for help. This is complicated stuff.
Absolutely. That's all for this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious and stay credentialed.